Welcome to Hand, Heart to Heart, a podcast where we look beyond the competition and try to appreciate fighting as communication. Our aim is to appreciate fighters not just as sports, but as complete works of art. Fighting games are games. You don't need to live the fighting game life to enjoy them. Nobody picks up a basketball and says, my height is too low tier, or gives up on baseball because they can't hit home runs. Fighting games can and should be enjoyed for all kinds of reasons. I'm your host, Amr, and with me is my co-host, Curly.
Hi, I'm Curly.
Hey Curly, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. I haven't actually. It's been a couple of days since I played some fighting games, and I can't wait to play them again. How about you? How are you doing?
Pretty good. I've been trying to keep up with some fighting games recently.
Wow, what a mood! What a mood!
Yeah, trying.
Yeah. So,
and over the last couple of years, I've made an actual effort to learn them.
So tell me, what is your history with fighting games? Because I think we have similar histories with fighting games, but we've gone in slightly different directions with them. So please, tell the people.
Yeah, so I guess a lot of my history with video games in general is mostly emulators.
Okay, yeah.
So around the, early 2000s, something like that, started getting really big into emulators, and then arcade emulators were like the biggest things, for the same reasons people got really impressed by them back when you used to see them in as arcade. You're like, right. Wow, these huge sprites and all these special effects. And they were kind of, I have a lot of younger brothers, so playing a fighting game, pretty easy to find an opponent when you live with a whole bunch of boys, right?
That very much lives within fighting games very much live within the sort of the sibling rivalry, right?
Yeah. So we played a lot of Marvel versus games on emulators, I did a lot of stuff like that. Played a lot of random fighting games over the years. Mostly, You just press the buttons and you look up just enough information to defeat your friends, right?
Right, exactly, yeah.
And I didn't really get into fighting games as like a thing you could learn and get better at.
As a hobby, right?
As a hobby, yeah. The transition from I play fighting games to I play fighting games.
Oh, buddy, I play fighting games.
not well, but
Yeah.
That wasn't until like Street Fighter V, which I decided to pick up on a whim. It was just like, I need something to do. This game's cheap. It's coming into its like second season or whatever, so it's kind of solidified. And I always liked Street Fighter and the characters, so that was my jumping in point. And
yeah,
it worked.
Yeah, cool.
What was your introduction?
So I have a sort of similar story to you in that I spent a long time surrounded by the aesthetic and idea of fighting games. I played a bit of them here and there with friends, indeed with my younger brother and that kind of thing. I would, just throw something on and have a fight and sort of not really understand what was going on. But like you say, you've got these big sprites, you've got this big world, even though it's painted with such small stages, it feels like textured and developed, It's good to be in that space for a while. And I did this for a long time, and like you as well. I think it was probably, I want to say probably the late 2000s. Actually, I got really into emulating SNES games for whatever reason, and Street Fighter 2 on there. I was like, wow, I remember playing this in, the indiscriminate mists of time, and it sort of re-solidified that as a classic old game that I liked but didn't really understand. And then I was super into for a long time. I've been super into competitive games, like tabletop games, video games. I just really liked competing when I was in sort of high school, and so I went from StarCraft 2, which burned me all the way out. I enjoyed that. Yeah, right. I know. I played that game, I enjoyed it, but it fried my brain. I had to stop. And then some friends of mine said, oh, we're just getting into League of Legends, when League of Legends was at the beginning of its huge upswing. And I enjoyed that too, but after a number of games of League of Legends that I refuse to recount because I just can't think about it, I got bored of playing games that required you to have a big team to play them. because like you could play solo, but it was like everyone who plays agrees that it's a worse experience, and trying to get together 5 people to play every time, not only was it a hassle, but it was like it would create situations where people who like each other and are really good friends get like mad at each other because of the way that the systems of the game encourage them to play together. They're conflicting ideas of what they should be doing, and I really didn't enjoy that. So on the way out of League of Legends, I was watching Evo, because my Twitter timeline is like, it was all like, sort of game dev types, and they are like, as a rule, pretty high on watching Evo, but not really being into fighting games. Like,
yeah,
a few of them play. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
I think Evo is like the one time you see like every single person on Games Twitter suddenly give a crap about fighting games.
Exactly. Games Twitter sort of lights up with fighting games, and it was
like, what are fighting games? And everybody finds out at the same time.
Right, exactly. And it was Evo, I want to say 15, but it could easily be 14. There was this like just absurd run. I think it was Gamerby. Like it's like it was this incredible narrative that you could follow even with no understanding of Street Fighter. And the Street Fighter 4 tournament was just like, it was so wild to me. Like I knew this scene existed, but I hadn't really thought about it ever. And I watched that and I was like, oh, maybe I should play Street Fighter. And then in 2016, Capcom came out with Street Fighter 5, and I was like, this is going to be the time that I really get into fighting games. And well, now here I am, sort of medium to okay at like 4 different fighting games. So
right,
yeah. So I played a lot of fighting games since I started playing Street Fighter 5. I think Sony did a thing a while back where it turns out that your PS4 has secretly been counting how many hours you've spent playing any given PS4 game. You can't access this information anywhere.
Oh yeah, they just sound like an email. At the end of, like, last year, like, this is how many hours you played of this thing. I'm like,
they were like, by the way, we made one of those funny like Facebook memory video things for you using your PS4, and I was like, huh, okay. But my number one game was, I think, Street Fighter 5. Yeah, Street Fighter 5, then Bloodborne, then Titanfall 2. So Street Fighter 5 was a pretty big part of the years that followed its release for me.
Yeah, I played considering how much you like Titanfall and Bloodborne.
Right, exactly, yeah. But then I guess at the time, Street Fighter 5, it was an interesting thing for me. And just it could have been anything. It just happened to be Street Fighter 5 that let me do basically the same thing for dozens of hours, Yeah. Just sort of sit in a room practicing basic combos and things like that. Just whenever I was like, my head was weird, I was just like, that's fine. I'll just sit down and try and get this combo. And some of them I even did. So
yeah. You make it up to like trial 5, and then they ask you to do something really weird, and you're like, nah, forget it. This isn't even practical. I'll never use this.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I guess so I talked a lot about like competition and esports bringing me towards fighting games, but I guess it's worth emphasizing that that's not the focus of this discussion. It's my pathway into fighting games, but it's definitely not the baseline for this podcast, I guess.
Yeah, so while we're gonna both continue to talk about our experience trying to improve at fighting games and kind of get deeper and appreciate more of the technical details and stuff like that, we also, there's a million different podcasts for that if you want.
Right, exactly.
But we more, like, what keeps us around is the aesthetic and like the energy of them.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of people used to play fighting games really casually and with friends and stuff, and had that kind of spirit of local competition. People used to really enjoy fighting games, and I think a lot of what keeps us around for them is kind of their like aesthetics and their worlds, and
absolutely,
the spirit behind them, rather than like, oh, check out this cool infinite that I figured out or whatever after I practiced for 20 hours.
Right, yeah, like I practiced for 20 hours, and then I made an 18-second Twitter video that got you know, 126 likes. And then that's, you know, that's all that is. Like, you're right that people used to play fighting games just as people just dip in and let's play some Street Fighter.
Right.
Way more than they do now. And it's to do with, it's like, there's a lot of factors. This is probably worth its own whole episode of a podcast, which we're not going to go into now. But like, you know, the default mode of multiplayer video game play right now is definitely not to just sit at a couch with a friend. You have, you know, your online service subscriptions that you've paid for. There are so many people with friends in different continents now in a way that there just weren't when the SNES was the main console in people's front rooms, right? Like,
even just like PlayStation, Saturn, PS2 even, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really, online changed a lot, and it kind of like revealed how much people like didn't know about fighting games.
Yeah, totally.
And then it made them like, you know, the only way to get a match is to play online, and then you go online and get destroyed immediately.
And like volumes have been written about how queuing for games with people online is like a terrible way to play fighting games. Like, you don't have the instant feedback of learning. Like, even if you're playing with someone who's not that talkative, like, just playing fighting games face to face with another person is way better. Just because you get the feedback of like feeling like you're learning how they play. Whereas if, you know, you power on Street Fighter and you get matched with another random Ken, it's just like you have to relearn how that Ken plays every single time you fight them. Even if their styles are nominally quite similar, you can't really establish those that communication with them that you can with a person in real life.
Yeah.
So
like if fighting is communication, then playing online is like speed dating or something.
yeah, it's like speed dating. Totally. It's like, if anything, it's like Tinder, right? It's
right.
just like...
you look at somebody, you maybe give them 30 seconds, and you're like, okay, fuck off. I'll never see you again.
Wow, thinking about Ken as like some fuckboy on Tinder it's doing a lot for me right now. It's doing a lot.
Absolutely. Eliza's found his account, and she's like, Ken, what the fuck is this? And he's like, I'm not going to see any of these women. I just want to see how many of them swipe right on me.
I sent you a picture of my Shoryuken. Please respond. Please respond. Wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the another thing that's worth mentioning is the idea that, you know, because default modes of play have gravitated away from you know, sitting in your friend's front room with their SNES and playing Super Turbo. It's like, because that default mode of play has changed, the way that businesses treat these games and try to market these games have changed, which is something we're going to run into a bunch, is that fighting games are super niche. And unless you are literally Ed Boon, millions of people do not buy your fighting game. So, right. You know, even Capcom, the people who make Street Fighter, they have to think of an angle to sell their game. And currently that angle is esports, because it's this aspirational dream that you could become, you know, super wealthy or famous just by grinding online in Street Fighter 5, right?
Right, yeah. I think that from there, I think it's worth getting into our next segment, where we're going to talk about our game of the episode, which is Street Fighter 5.
Yeah, it's Street Fighter 5. Let's talk about Street Fighter 5.
Yeah, so we said earlier that Street Fighter V was kind of an easier entry point for us specifically, but also I think it did bring in a bigger community in general, especially into the esports.
It has a broad appeal, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Street Fighter 4 did a lot of work to like rebuilding fighting games as a place and a community. Well, I guess less as a community because that kind of like always existed, but kind of like bringing in fresh blood.
The jury is definitely out That's a funny joke. The jury is definitely out as to how much Street Fighter 4 like rejuvenated a dead fighting game scene, but the reality definitely is that it brought fighting games to a new audience, whether that audience is people who had left because of Street Fighter 3 or people who had never heard of fighting games, and the prominence of the Capcom Pro Tour or Evo brought it to people's attention, or just people talking about it brought it to people's attention, because it was a huge deal.
You definitely see a lot of the younger like big names that are in Street Fighter now had their start in Street Fighter 4.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just in general, it kind of like gave people an appealing point to like, oh, it's Street Fighter. It's the one we all played, and it's back, and your characters are in it, and there's new stuff, and it looks really good.
Yeah, it looks great. I think this game looks fantastic. Like Street Fighter 4 is by no means a bad looking game. It's very stylized. It's very it brings Street Fighter into 3D in a way that is good. But I feel like Street Fighter 5 like sort of, I guess it polishes up that aesthetic, and it just looks smooth and cool. I don't know. It accentuates the things about Street Fighter character designs that I like.
Yeah. So it did a lot of work in basically. Sorry, it did a lot of work in basically moving forward the thing Street Fighter 4 did, and then it leaned into the service-based stuff and community stuff and more competitive focused stuff, and made it like a core part of that game.
Yeah, it's a game pulled in a lot of different directions, right? Because it's the first Street Fighter game released for it was a launch title for the PS4. Well, it was marketed heavily as, this game's only going to be on the PS4, and it's not going to be on the Xbox One, so you need to get a PS4 if you want to get on the ground floor of the next generation of fighting games and all of that stuff.
Yeah, Sony paid for it.
Oh yeah, boy did they. It's like the main way in which that is obvious is that Street Fighter 5 remains one of maybe the only big name fighting game where if you have it on the PS4 and your friend has it on the personal computer, you can just play with each other.
Yep.
At almost no hassle. Like, we were doing that just the other day.
Mm-hmm. And it basically just last generation, the Xbox 360 kind of became the de facto place for people to play stuff.
Right.
But it kind of really didn't
everyone
matter
played it.
where you were playing.
Yeah.
But this generation, like, I've never seen an Xbox at locals.
Yeah, no, never.
Nobody has ever played a fighting game on an Xbox.
all the Killer Instinct players listening to this podcast just turned it off.
I mean, they're gonna get even more mad in a minute when we talk about the more meta stuff about this game.
All 10 of the regular Killer Instinct players are never going to listen to this podcast again.
But honestly, basically, even when games come out on the Xbox, if you see them at a tournament, it's going to be on the PlayStation 4 because, Capcom and Sony made it. So this is what it's Street Fighter 5. It's still probably the biggest fighting game right now in terms of tournament play.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting one that I guess we'll probably talk about in a bit, but it's in a very interesting place. I think it still has the record for it definitely still has the record for most Evo signups. Something like 5,000 people signed up to play this game in Evo 2016.
I think this year Smash Brothers beat it out.
Number. It didn't actually. Smash this year is at 3.5k, so that's huge, but not bigger. I thought
something beat it out by one place.
It's what's it? I think Tekken. I can't remember if Tekken is more or less right now, but the point is that Street Fighter is in an interesting place. It's no longer unquestionably the dominant Western-made fighting game, I guess. But that's an interesting thing that we can talk about in a bit, I guess. Because one thing I wanted to ask is that, apart from the things that we were talking about before, where it develops the aesthetic ideas of Street Fighter 4 and makes them higher fidelity and stuff, what is it that appeals about the aesthetic of Street Fighter? If people don't if by some miracle you play video games and have not been exposed to Street Fighter's idea, what is it about the idea of Street Fighter and Street Fighter 5 that appeals to you?
Yeah, so I guess Street Fighter has always been starting with the original games, the World Warrior series.
Mm.
So it's been like various levels of caricature of fighting styles from everywhere around the world.
Right. On the plus side, it's international, and on the bad side, sometimes it's quite racist.
Yeah, Dalsim, he's a yogi with skulls around his neck, and
he's got baby skulls around his neck. Don't worry
he does
about
yoga
it.
that lets him stretch his body and shoot fire. Yeah, it's not weird at all. It is definitely goes into straight up racial caricature at times, but it's also because it's it's such a worldwide cast. It ends up kind of representing lots of different countries and cultures, to various levels of success. But you get like a really wide range of fighting styles and stuff. Very stylized, like shonen anime. I guess like silhouettes and art styles.
The shonen anime influence is definitely a big deal. Like the central conceit is that the martial artists are so good at martial arts that they can shoot lasers from their hands.
Yeah, basically.
That's very shonen.
We focus our ki and then we can shoot materialized ki across the room and destroy tanks or whatever.
Exactly.
It's very much that style of martial arts anime. And the main characters in the series are very much your stock shonen protagonists who want to get stronger because they want to get stronger.
Yep. I mean, Ryu even like eats a lot. Like he's Goku.
Yeah, he eats a lot, and he loves rice and natto.
Yep.
And that's one of the fun things
fighting
about
all the time.
Street Fighter is even as like broad as their characters and stuff are, they all have really detailed backstories and likes and dislikes.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's a huge part of it for me is the likes and dislikes on each character. Like you start up Street Fighter 5, you go to your favorite character and it has it has a big picture of them, and then it has this weird like stat wheel that doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
And then it has I think like their height, their weight, and where they come from, and then their likes and dislikes. And it's from as varied as like Ryu likes, like what are Ryu's likes? It's like, was it rice and what?
Natto, like fermented soybeans.
Yeah, and then you have, and this is probably like one of the things that endeared me to Street Fighter V the most when I first got it, was that it also has like, these martial artists who come to the tournaments and they punch each other and they have a good time. And then it has Nikali, who is like a sort of, he's a totem man from Joey Jojo's.
Yeah.
And his yeah, he is, right?
Yeah.
And his V-trigger like special state is that his hair goes all Super Saiyan big, and he just screams a lot. And his like is powerful souls.
Yeah, he just likes powerful souls.
And like, who doesn't? Who doesn't like powerful souls? Who can't identify with that motivation?
Yeah, Rashid, the character that I play in Street Fighter V, he's just like basically a Saudi prince. And the things that he likes are like friends and technology. He just like likes to talk to his friends on Twitter, basically.
Yeah, he's like DMing his friends in the story. It's great.
Yeah, and he's like telling you, he's like talking to Ryu and be like, what? No, I think there's a one where if you beat Alex, he's like, you don't have a cell phone even though you live in a big city?
I was going to say that's double good, right? Because Alex is like he's a New Yorker, but he doesn't have a phone. He's so New Yorker that he doesn't have a phone. I think that's really funny.
Yeah, and so there's like lots of really small character things like that, and ways they like flesh out the world. Even before like this game added like an actual story mode, that's like really endearing to like, in like a really broad way, but in a way that you can also like kind of relate and project upon.
Yeah, that's one of the things that fighting games do, I think, almost maybe uniquely well. I think they maybe share it with like, I don't know, collectible card games or something, with telling big and like complex stories with very, very tiny spaces to do that. I guess the famous example these days is Dark Souls, right? Like item flavor texts tell so much.
Right.
But this game, before it had, like you say, a real story, you have these characters telling you everything about each other by how they, like the one line they say to each other before and after each fight. Like that stuff's really good
Yeah.
in this game. And the fighting games have been doing it for a super long time, and it shows how good they are in this game, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of worth talking about the specific characters of this one and like kind of the stuff that we like. I guess like who are the specific characters that you play and like in this game is a good place to start.
So,
and
like
why?
I said, I was initially drawn to Nikali because I guess he seems so different to all of the Street Fighter characters I was used to. Because I suppose another part of my experience with fighting games that I should maybe have mentioned is that after Evo, I bought Street Fighter 4, and it was totally inscrutable to me. Like, I tried to figure out how to play it, but like some of the basic techniques you learn, because I tried to learn, pretty much by myself. I didn't have a group of people who were already quite good at it to teach me how the mechanics work.
Right,
So
but you were
I was
also
trying to
probably playing
self-teach.
like the last version of it where they added like a trillion more mechanics.
Right,
on top.
exactly. Yeah, so I was playing Ultra Street Fighter 4. I was trying to figure out how to play Akuma, who has a bunch of very high complexity techniques, and I was watching like smaller tournaments for it, and it was just stacked to the gills with Akuma mirrors, Evil Ryu mirrors, and Akuma versus Evil Ryu. And Nikali seemed like a big change from those kinds of characters, so I was drawn to Nikali. And Nikali is really cool. He's like this, he's this angry guy. He's got this very sort of primal, aggressive fighting style. He did lots of swipes, lots of sort of claw-like motions.
Right.
And an interesting detail about Nikali, which I sort of noticed, is some of the characters have like electric attacks, like Laura in the base game has them, and also Blanca, who was added more recently, has them. And because it's a sort of cartoony style game, when you get electrocuted, you sort of your model goes black and you can see your skeleton, right?
Yeah.
Like because it's a cartoon. Nikali doesn't have one. He's just no bones, fully no bones.
Man.
Which is, again, I think a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure thing, but
Oh, really?
and there's there's a bunch
Do
of
the Totem have no bones?
there's definitely a thing where like I remember it from the small part of the show I did watch, where one of the pillar men he fits through like a very like the keyhole in a door or something.
God, I think you're
because
right,
yeah. But and that's again to go off on a tangent from my tangent. Street Fighter is I can't remember actually. Which way does it go around? I guess it must be that the Guile's design from Street Fighter 2 is based on the Robo-Nazi from Part 2 of Joey JoJo's.
Of course.
I think that's it. It must be that way around,
Yeah,
right? That must
feels
be how
right.
that time.
JoJo's pretty old.
Yeah, right, for sure. So Nikali. And then they announced for the first season of DLC Fighters, they announced Urian, who is this hilarious character who is he's the younger brother of the new Messiah for the world, which hasn't happened yet. This is all is meant to happen in Street Fighter 3, which is set long after the events of Street Fighter 5, after some kind of weird apocalypse.
Is it an apocalypse, Ham?
I think so. I think that's what the second impact in Street Fighter 3 Second Impact refers to. They're like huge.
An Evangelion impact happened.
I think it might be. I think it literally might be.
The second impact happened. There's only summer on Street Fighter World now.
Yeah. So but yeah, Urian has like a chip on his shoulder because he's sort of, he's this like he has the power to turn his skin into metal. And that wasn't good enough because his brother can control fire and ice, I guess.
Right.
So he's only the president of the Illuminati. That was it. He's the president of the Illuminati. But he was like, the thing is that he and his brother were trained to become, the god of the new world.
Right.
So they're like, he's got all this like huge theatrical training and stuff. He has this powerful booming laugh, is calling everyone pathetic insects and terrible, but he's not that good at it. So like he has all of this training for a role that he'll never get, so he just uses it to be really rude while fighting people.
It's really it's really good.
It goes around in this like really like heavily tailored suit, And then if you hold a specific set of buttons before the game starts, all of his clothes just burn off and he fights in a loincloth because he's a Greek wrestler. He was trained as like a Greek wrestler.
Yeah.
Like, wow. And this game is full of characters with that, like that, all that I just said. You could say that about most of the characters in Street Fighter V.
Yeah, if you really get into the backstories, they have like all histories with each other. And like, because everybody has like an ending where they beat the big bad in every single game, like there's barely any like there's no real canonical explanations for everything.
Yeah, pretty much.
They don't care.
I mean, like I said, right? Street Fighter 3 is set after all of the other games, but the way that Street Fighter 5 ends, it is not remotely clear how they get between those two, and that just doesn't fucking matter. Whatever.
Yeah, you know, they it's more about the small little interactions and like the fun details.
Right,
like
exactly.
That. I already mentioned Rashid, earlier, but it's worth reiterating how much Rashid kept me in this game.
Rashid is super cool.
If Rashid wasn't in this game, I don't think I would have been stuck around. He's like one of the new characters for Street Fighter V, and he's just basically, you know, he's like a rich Saudi prince, and he's got like, I think it's implied his backpack lets him do like wind tricks.
I guess it's either that or magic. I don't know. Yeah. Probably both.
I don't know. I feel like the technology angle on him is just like he's basically doing like Arabic jinn magic.
Yeah, that's
poses,
a good point.
But it's just like, but he's got a technology backpack, and his fighting style makes no sense. Like if you look at the poses he's doing, he's like crouching down and slapping people on the head twice with both of his arms and like a windmill. And it's like this is a completely impractical fighting style.
Yeah, for sure.
But it makes
it. It's like a flourish. It works really well.
He's like it's like those Turkish dancers or something.
Right, I think that is definitely the draw. Yeah, like it's definitely the aesthetic draw that they're working with.
Yeah,
Rashid is really, really cool.
It's really funny and expressive, and he just shoots tornadoes.
That was by the way, that was Rashid's theme that we played between this section and the last one.
It's just really good.
Not only is it really good, but I think it is. It's one of very few themes in the game with like a vocal track. And the vocal track is literally just there to yell Rashid's name when it breaks down into the chorus. It's great.
The YouTube comments on there are one of the first times YouTube comments have been useful. And one of the top comments says Dubai step, like dubstep.
Oh yeah, you told me that.
And really good. I guess after that I started playing Sakura.
Yeah, Sakura's cool.
Once they added her in. She's basically just like a Japanese schoolgirl that somehow has to be in like every single fighting game.
I was gonna say they've made some concession to the fact that she must have aged at some point, over the last.
Yeah, I think she's out of high school now. She has a job
because she works at an esports cafe now. That's her current story. She works at
an esports cafe. She just really likes Ryu. She saw Ryu one time and just like, I want to become that cool. man.
Yeah, that's why she looks like that. She looks like, she looks like a Ryu cosplayer on purpose.
Yeah, she is a Ryu cosplayer, which is really funny because Ryu has like the worst looking gi. It does not wear shoes.
Yeah, Ryu looks like he has to be reminded to wash.
Yeah, he doesn't bathe. He's like friends with one of the richest people on the cast, but he just like goes from town to town fighting people and it just like living in poverty because he doesn't care about anything but getting stronger and training.
Yeah, exactly. Like Ryu is one of those people who like gets away with a bunch of stuff because he's so good at fighting. Like he's at he'll be at the fucking Kanzuki estate dinner and all these socialites or business owners will be there like, why does that guy fucking stink? And Korean will just have to be like, he beat me in a fight, he has to be here. I need him here. I need to feed him a lot so I can train with him.
And Sakura actually like ends up being friends with like the rich girl and a ninja. I think Blanca that's too.
Was it because in Street Fighter 3, I think one of the tiny little character details is that when Sakura and Ibuki start a fight with each other, they have this like clash animation where they both do like this diving kick and it goes swing in the middle of the screen. But then in Street Fighter 5 they're like gal pals. It's great.
Yeah, it's really funny. I really like her just because she has the enthusiastic can't be down schoolgirl
Yeah,
energy.
she's great.
And then she just
And it
basically
really,
does like
yeah.
rougher versions of Ryu's moves,
Mm.
which is really fun. She's just like a really unrefined version of him.
Yeah, but she's sort of increasingly, I guess, getting her own. As though you need to develop the character aesthetically for new games and stuff. She's getting her own like spin on those moves. Like it's much more aerial. She does a lot more like jumping and bouncing on the opponent at the moment, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's really fun. Yeah, I think those are the big characters that I got into.
Yeah, I mean those are very cool characters.
Yeah,
And I guess, oh, sorry, you
it
guys.
was. I guess it's worth saying that when Sakura came out, she was not good.
Yes, yeah. That character wasn't that. She was like, she was announced at, I think it was some big Capcom event. People lost their minds, and then she came out and was playable, and people were like,
They're like, "There's
this
no way
character's
to
bad."
there's no way to redeem her. She's like unredeemable."
Yeah.
Some people said, being very melodramatic about it.
Yeah, people are pretty melodramatic about characters in this game. Like, I mean, if you're listening to this podcast now and sort of nodding along, thinking, yeah, people are melodramatic about characters, Sagat is good. Okay, people say Sagat's bad. They're wrong. Sagat is good. He's fine. But
Yeah.
as you're about to go on, they did something about Sakura because people didn't like that character, right?
So a big thing about this game is that they aren't afraid to make like big changes. There's been a couple of what they call seasons, and those have basically almost been stand-ins for like version revisions. Like before, you know, within like 2 years or something, they'd come out with a new version. You know, Super Street Fighter, Ultra Street Fighter, 2014 edition or whatever.
So it was Street Fighter
4.
I think it was Street Fighter 4 Super Arcade Edition Ultra. Those middle two might be swapped, but I think that's the order.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it was a new game. It was a new boxed copy of the game every time. You had to buy it again. You know, new disc, all of that kind of thing. But part of the conceit was in 2016. You know, the games as a service model is evolving. When we release Street Fighter 5, there will be no Ultra. There will be no Super. You just buy the game once, and we will patch everything. You know, the new version will just be a patch every year, and we will fund that with DLC sales.
Yeah,
right?
and you can win all. You can get all the meaningful characters and stuff with currency you earn in game.
What's that currency called, Armor?
Fight money.
My fight money!
Fight money.
My fight money.
My fight money.
Was that a Dan
Missed
line?
opportunity. Sorry?
Was that a Dan line?
That's
or is that a
No, that's a
a
Balrog.
boxer? Balrog.
Yeah.
Which Balrog?
Well, English Balrog.
Yeah.
There's Balrog on my machine, friend. But the what was I going to say? I remember now. Oh yeah, missed opportunity to call that fucking Bison Bucks, but
Yeah.
we'll
no
take
Bison
fight money,
bucks.
I guess.
No Zenny either. I think they planned something called Zenny.
Yeah. It was originally going to be a free currency called fight money and a paid currency called Zenny, and then they scrapped the Zenny, and you could just buy fight money.
You could. It was just like, here's money. Just buy it with money.
Oh yeah, that was it. Yeah, instead of having the price be in Zenny, the price was just in fight in
like
money as well as
bucks.
fight money. Yeah, Zenny, fight money and dollars.
Dollars or pounds.
Falsely suggesting. Oh yeah, or pounds. But yeah, that falsely suggests that you can't win dollars in fights. But anyway, we'll move on.
Yeah. They were infamous for having a rough launch and whatever. It's not really worth going into that again. But they eventually kind of got there.
Yeah. I would definitely say I would publicly state that in 2019, Street Fighter V is a good game. It's good.
Yeah.
You like Street Fighter, you'll like this.
They figured out most of their stuff.
Yeah.
It's still like way more work to earn a character with fight money than it is to buy one. Like if you put in the amount of if you think about the amount of labor hours you would have to put into Street Fighter to earn a character, I'm like,
it's a lot.
I'll just work a job for 1 hour. I'm good. I'm not gonna do that.
It's one of those things that at the time, like it felt pretty good because I didn't buy any of the first season of DLC characters with real money. I earned it from playing the game, and that felt pretty good. But at that time, it gave you a bunch of like one-time rewards for finishing like combo trials and
story mode and all
stuff like
that.
that.
And they definitely got worse in that.
Yeah, they removed a bunch of that actually. Like if you buy a new copy of the game now, even though you can buy it without any of the characters unlocked, that stuff is still gone, which is slightly suspect.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is that having to, when you say I need 100,000 fight money to get this character, and you get literally 50 for every fight that you do, it gets a lot worse when you realize that you've bought the base version of the game and there are now 18 or more characters that are not unlocked. That
and there's no way to try.
Don't get me wrong. No, that is a problem, and it's one without an easy solution, I think.
Yeah, I mean there is an easy solution, because like with many of the things that Street Fighter V tried, Killer Instinct basically did all of them.
Yeah,
and
Killer
did
Instinct.
them better.
Yeah,
and
pretty
one
much.
of the notable things that they did is that they had a revolving roster of free characters.
Yeah. So this is what I like when they were talking about Street Fighter V, like having, like I said, just come off League of Legends. I really assumed that this free-to-play model is what they would go for. Like,
yeah, seems obvious.
Have like Ryu be free all the time, and then rotate every other character that's free, or even have a premium version of the game where you just buy, you spend a normal amount of money, you get all the characters.
Street Fighter V, core fighters.
Core fighters.
Core fighters. Which,
Street Fighter V Core Values Edition.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't get that joke, you lead a better life than me, my friend.
You're leading a better life. Don't look it up. You don't. It's not like egregious, but you don't need to understand things like that. Sometimes fighting games are. We say fighting games are good, but sometimes fighting games they're bad.
Oh, they're bad.
They're really
so
bad. But you think that would be the way to do it, right?
And Killer Instinct basically did, right?
Mm-hmm. They'd have that rotating cast, and you'd be able to try people.
And like the whole game was free, right?
From the
Windows Store.
Whole game was free. They eventually made more and more of the game free. At the once season 2 or something came out, they made, or season 2 or 3. By that point, they made all the season 1 characters free stuff like that. And then they rotate through the cast of 2, and they really did a good job of making it pretty much leading the way in being a games as service thing. A lot of the stuff they did was ahead of its time, but also they were on the fucking Xbox, and nobody plays fighting games on the Xbox. And
the Windows 10 store.
They're and on Steam now, but yeah, come on.
yeah.
That and they're not Street Fighter.
They're not Street Fighter, and to be fair to them, Killer Instinct is still going. They had 400 entrants at Combo Breaker this year. Game's, if you want to play that game, you sure can.
And people like it and enjoy it, and they say it's some of the best fighting games they've played in their life. And I believe them, but I'm never gonna play Killer Instinct because I don't like how the characters look.
We're definitely gonna do an episode on Killer Instinct. I'm gonna make you try Killer Instinct.
It's just that
some months from now.
It's not, but it's Killer Instinct did we just want to acknowledge for the record, Killer Instinct did pretty much everything Street Fighter V did and better, but it's Killer Instinct, and just it doesn't have the same appeal of character and world and stuff like that, and that's a huge part.
And there's that element of you can, with Killer Instinct, an intellectual property that was, to put it bluntly, fucking dead until Killer Instinct 2013 came out. When you bring that back, you can be let's try this brand new zany monetization model with it. Whereas with Street Fighter, if you want to sell another Street Fighter, you probably have to be a bit more conservative.
Right.
And it felt fairly conservative. It didn't shatter any molds, but it was serviceable. It was good.
Yeah. It's been conservative to a fault at points, but
yeah, I would say that's true.
Like I said, it got there.
Yeah, I got that. And like it's like you say, right? They haven't been afraid to make big changes. Like the one that people probably talked about the most is that for I think the second season of the game, they fucking all invincible reversals. So when you're lying on the floor and you well, not necessarily just when you wake up, but you do this attack that it rises, you can't be hit out of it, and it's like it's a gamble that your opponent is going to try and hit you rather than say block or do something else.
Yeah.
They made those not invincible unless you spend meter on them, and that's like different and weird.
Yeah.
But
so basically, you used to just kind of be able to be like, oh yeah, I'm just going to do this move because if they try something, then they're going to get hit and I'll probably be fine. And now you really have to think a little bit more about it.
Right, exactly. Like, it used to be that against some characters, you would have to, if they were knocked down, you would have to respect the fact that they could invincibly, like, just jump out at you.
Yeah, Ryu could always do a jumping uppercut and do huge damage on you, and you would have to just respect that. And now, now when he does it, you're just like, you just kind of laugh, block, and then you destroy him.
Right, exactly. It completely changes the whole, I guess the word is yomi, around that mechanic. Right?
Yeah, it changes the mind game.
What level are they on? What level am I on? Like, yeah, it changes the mind games. Because, like, now, for the whole round, I have to think about whether I have enough meter to invincible reversal. Like, do I not spend meter now, so I'll have it for when I get knocked down later? Like, that kind of thing. Like, does my opponent think I'm going to save that meter for later, which lets me use this now because they won't expect me to quote-unquote waste that resource, that kind of thing. It changed things a lot, and a lot of people were not happy about it, but, like, the game has persisted, so...
Yeah, and they've straight up added, like, way more moves.
Yeah.
So they've added, like, specific special moves to certain characters, like, Fang, who's this, like, weird poison guy who they imply is, pretending to be Chinese.
Oh, I didn't know that. What?
Like, if you fight Chun-Li, she like comments about the character on his shirt, just like being some number or something and like being wrong. And she's like, "Are you even Chinese?"
That's
so maybe he's like a Chinese weeb or something.
Because Fang's thing is that he's obsessed with the number 2, right?
Yeah,
all
it's
of
like
his
the number 2
heavy
or something in
normals
Chinese
hit twice.
Like, misspelled.
That's hilarious. Hilarious.
They just like added like a weird like he flaps in the air or something to escape. And the fortune teller Minot just got a new move where she like explodes her orbs. But also everybody got like new V triggers. Which is like,
right. So that's this. It's this revenge mechanic which gives your character access to some unique either state or new move, or it changes the way that you play that character, but usually for a short time.
Yeah, I guess it's like sort of like an ult. Is the closest thing I can think of.
I guess it's like
not as dramatic, but it's sort of like the ult for like if you're thinking about like a team-based shooter or MOBA or something.
Yeah,
like a really
it's sort of like an
ability.
ascended state. Yeah, and if you think about like some games that have those kinds of moves, like sometimes they use that slot for more variable things, like an additional ability that characters can use more often than like a super move that does a bunch of damage or stuff like that. Like it gives the character designs texture, I guess. It was where they hid some of the complexity that those characters had in, for example, Ultra Street Fighter 4, things like that.
Yeah, so to like walk it back a little bit, in Ultras and Street Fighter 4 in general, they added Ultras, which were basically like souped up super moves that did like very dramatic. It was their big like showpiece because you would be normally fighting in 2D, but for these moves they'd like switch to 3D and do like a big cinematic thing. And you got those
you get
every
your cool
round.
Cut in, it goes
and those were like on a separate bar. So and you basically were guaranteed to get them per round, right?
Yeah. So like the meter fills when you take something like 75% of your life in damage, and it resets every round, so there's no reason not to use it, so they get used a lot, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it just basically changed the super meter to be useless. Except for like using, enhanced, like you would never use a super. Because there's way more.
For a lot of characters, supering is not not valuable. Yeah, like there are like as Street Fighter 4 went on, it introduced more and more things that you would use your meter for that weren't supers and stuff like that. That game is very complicated.
Yeah. So 5, they decided, you know what? We want people to change the way they use meter, and we want to like make more unique and really like obvious differences between characters right away.
Right, exactly.
And they added the V system, so you get the V skill, which is just like you press 2 buttons, and then I don't know, like if you're Rashid, you'll do like a flip or a roll, depending if you're standing or crouching, or if you're Sakura, you can leap onto the air, and then it's like between if you're gonna try to do a juggle on them, do a dive kick, do a grab, things like that.
Right, and then Nikali like pounds the ground, and then that creates an impact some distance away. That's like a sort of quasi projectile thing, and then Urian's thing turns his skin bronze and gives him armor to all of his attacks.
Yeah, so he can walk
hit
through
the next
attacks.
attack he does.
So
right, exactly.
It just makes it really obvious, like, how do I play this character? And you push a button and like, okay, so Rashid moves around really fast. I probably want to move around really fast.
So what that does is it means that, because like we said, Street Fighter 4, very complicated game. What it does is it means that when you try out a new character in Street Fighter 5, you instantly know, right, okay, so this character has the 6 buttons, light, heavy, and medium, kick and punch. I also have a super, I also have a number of special moves. But then, rather than having to sort of like, because in Street Fighter 4, sometimes you would have to like actively figure out what makes a character tick, what like weird thing do they have. Whereas in Street Fighter 5, it's pretty much always, what does their V skill do? It does this. What does their V trigger do? It does this. Right. That's this character's identity.
Yeah, I can fight around this.
Exactly.
I immediately kind of like Street Fighter 5 isn't the best game at telling you how to play it, but you can kind of like intuit a lot of things just from the V system.
Right. It's
like,
very
I can
very
build
legible.
a game plan around this right away.
Yeah, exactly. It helps you understand, like you say, not only your own character, but also any character that you might face. You can see what their V-trigger meter is at any time, so you know how long you have until they do whatever their weird thing is, and then when they do it, you know how long they'll be able to do it for.
Yeah, and you can kind of see how many times they can use a thing, because a lot of ones, they'll give you like for example, if you do Sakura's V-trigger, she can do one where she gets powered up, either fireballs or like uppercuts. And every time she uses it, it like drains a little bit. So you can be like, oh, okay, she can only use it like 2 or 3 more times. And so I have to kind of respect that until they waste them or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, the V system is like, it's still a good it still has that comeback factor and like some of the flashiness of like the ultras and stuff.
Yeah, sure.
But
like it has the same thing where the screen freezes and it goes and like your character, like their hands will explode or something, and then some part of your character might be on fire or covered in electricity for the duration of your V trigger or stuff like that.
But it also makes you kind of work for it a little bit.
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
Not like that much more.
No,
because like you can kind of confirm into them and stuff like that. Like you can do a hit and then do it a different hit and then activate it.
Yeah.
And
it's fighting games,
and
obviously.
there's a technical crap around that.
Yeah.
If you know what you're doing, you can get just as much damage and stuff like that. And people complain about that, but it kind of, like you said, it gives people much more of an identity and like a plan to build around.
Yeah,
like it makes it more legible of when and how to use it.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's really cool.
Yeah,
it definitely feels a lot more like the stuff we kind of expect from online games now, with everything like becoming a Destiny or things like that.
Yeah,
it's the same kind of thing. Like when you pick a class in Destiny, you have these 3 skills and you're like, okay, what do these skills do?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I get it. I know how to work with my team now. And now it's like, oh, I get it. I kind of know what range I should be at.
Yeah. It's like it's something that I think as we continue this series, we're going to find hit on a lot more, which is the fact that you can, like, there are ways to reduce the complexity in a fighting game without dumbing it down.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that like the game is not explicitly worse or easier to play because you squirrel the complexity away in a different place or make it more legible to particular players. Like Street Fighter V is kind of unambiguously easier in some respects than Street Fighter 4 was. There's lower execution requirements to do combos in certain situations and things like that. But the people who play it at the highest level continuously report that it's harder to be continuously good at than Street Fighter 4 was, for lots of exciting and different reasons. But basically, it means that anyone who tries to tell you that making fighting games easier makes the competition worse is full of shit.
Yeah, and I think that's a thing you'll find that we keep coming back to, because a lot of the complaints is like, oh, there's no such thing as fighting game accessibility. You can't make a game that casual players can enjoy and stuff like that without making it like an empty, shallow game. And that's not true. And I feel like to varying degrees, Street Fighter V and like other games that have come out have really proved that.
Yeah, and I think they will continue to prove that.
Yeah, I don't think that this is the best example of something that you can get into if you're like, where do I start with fighting games? But it's kind of like you can look at it and understand like why a bunch of people picked this one to start playing games with.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that I would recommend against this game for someone who is looking to learn fighting games, because it's like it's not like a smooth on-ramp, I guess, to fighting games, but it gives you a legible and, I would say, broadly speaking, accessible look at the sort of most, I guess, the platonic ideal of the contemporary fighting game is in Street Fighter V. Right?
Yeah, somewhere in there. And like, it feels good. It's a little slower paced than most of the stuff that's out there.
Yeah, and I can't overstate how good it feels. Like the kinetics in this game, the way it like feels to hit someone is really good. Like just the sort of, it's like a real like there's a real hit behind your various kicks and punches, and like there's this system where when one of your heavier attacks counters your opponent's attack, it hits them while they're trying to do an attack. It'll make this crushing sound and give you a crush counter, which gives you extra time to do whatever you like, and it just the crunch that makes is so satisfying that it drove easily the first 100 hours of me playing this game.
Yeah, like if somebody's just getting hit by it normally, they're just like, and their face flies back. When you crush counter them, like electricity comes off your head. They like spin around in the air, flying away from your kick, and then the game's just like, all right, homie, it's time for you to do some stuff.
Yeah. In the edit, we should definitely put the crush counter sound in here for anyone who hasn't heard it.
It's like, all right, you did it. You outplayed them. It's time for you to get your reward. And then most of the time what I do is I miss the follow-up because I wasn't expecting it to land. But you know what?
That's
it's
a real
fine
fighting game mood, baby.
Yeah, because the reward of hitting them with the big heavy attack is good enough.
Yeah.
Do you have any final thoughts on this game?
I guess I would say that my closing thoughts on this game are sort of the wider aesthetic thesis of Street Fighter, and less sort of more broadly speaking, I guess, fighting games as a whole, but is exemplified in Street Fighter, is the idea of like, this is a world where people only interact with one another by fighting. Right?
Yes.
Like Ken and Ryu are best friends. Like they would die for each other, and they express that by punching each other in the face.
They immediately start a fight every single time they see each other.
Exactly, and it's fantastic. Like that is the ideal that you embody when you play Street Fighter with your friends. However seriously you play it, you are fighting together for mutual enjoyment to, at whatever level, get better at fighting. Yeah, and Street Fighter does that so well, and it feels great.
It's sparring.
Right, exactly. No one, even the people who die in Street Fighter don't die for very long. They come back.
Yeah, the stakes don't matter.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's why it's so weird when so Charlie Nash, the like ex-military guy who was betrayed by his force and gunned down by a helicopter, feels so out of place in this game because
it's so funny. He's like the most angry, dark face. His face is literally like half zombified and machine.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's just
like
like push up my glasses, say something very edgy.
Yeah, exactly. He feels so out of place in that game. Like, he's cool, but even the angry pillar man who eats people, like, it looks at that guy and he's like, whoa, man, chill out.
Yeah,
you know?
right. He's got this really great, like, super animation where everything goes dark. Your character looks around and he appears from the darkness and cuts you in half.
He literally nothing personnel kids you. He fucking teleports behind you and cuts you in half. But yeah.
It's like you said, it's the platonic ideal of fighting.
Right.
It's like when you
that's my closing thoughts on Street Fighter V is that Street Fighter is really good and Street Fighter V is a good Street Fighter game.
Yeah, I think that's a good takeaway.
Yeah, so and then I guess segment 3.
Another fight is coming your way.
So we got some questions. We got an impressive amount of questions for what's basically our first podcast for a bunch of people that nobody knows about.
Yeah. So if this segment has surprised you, each episode we're gonna take questions on whether it's the game that we're talking about this episode, or just fighting games current affairs, or anything that you've ever wanted to know about fighting games in general. As we've said, we're assuming no like super deep fighting games knowledge from anyone. So if you want to know anything from what a given pro player feels about a given balance change to what a Shoryuken is, please ask.
Yeah, and on that note, please also expect nothing from us, because we'll probably not know half the answers. I promise I will make one up that sounds good. I will at least attempt to make up an answer. I do not promise that they will be accurate or super smart commentator level analysis or anything like that.
We promise we will deliver our answers confidently, and that's all we got.
The first question we got from my friend M, who runs Abnormal Mapping, a very good podcast network. They ask,
shout outs to Abnormal Mapping, friends of the show.
They ask, when will Virtual Fighter come back from the war?
Never.
Second will never make another Virtua Fighter.
And that sucks, because fucking Virtua Fighter is cool as hell. I played some Virtua Fighter 5 the other day. That game's really, really good.
Yeah,
I
they
think
put
you're
it in
more
Yakuza.
likely.
You can play Virtua Fighter in Yakuza. You can go to their.
I was going to say, like, you're more likely to see a brand new Virtua Fighter game inside of a Yakuza game than you are to see a standalone new Virtua Fighter game, I think.
Yeah. Oh man, Virtua Fighter, fantastic 3D fighting series. Everybody should play it. Nobody can play it because it's not in any easily accessible form, and they will never make another one.
How can you play? You can emulate a PS2 or PS3. Did Virtua Fighter 5 come out on the PS3?
Yeah, it came out on PS3 and Xbox.
Yeah.
The latest version you can get on the Xbox 360. It's backwards compatible with Xbox One, and it's in the basic part of it is in Yakuza 6, I think. 6 or Kiwami, Kiwami 2.
That's outside my wheelhouse.
No,
I ain't know about
it's in
Yakuza.
one of them. Yeah. There's one in the recent ones. 2 you can get on like everything. That was on PS3. That's also on Xbox 360 and backwards compatible. I bet they put it on that Sega Genesis Mini or whatever they're coming out with. It's not the real Virtua Fighter 2. It's like some 2D version of it. You can find that one. That one's easy. That's easy to emulate. Same with 1. 3 was that Dreamcast game that came out on like nothing else. So yes, Virtua Fighter, never going to happen again. You can play Virtua Fighter characters in Dead or Alive 5 for the PlayStation 4. Because they had a crossover.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you really like Virtua Fighter, you should try Dead or Alive 6, right?
Yeah, but 6 doesn't have the Virtua Fighter characters in it.
No, that is true. But like the systems are like, very similar. Right?
Similar. They're not as complex. They're a little bit more
right, sure.
the like counters of the systems.
Yeah.
And like what beats what is like a lot more straightforward.
We should do an episode on both like Virtua Fighter and Dead or Alive 6.
Oh, we absolutely will. Hopefully by that time there's going to be another Virtua Fighter. They made another 2D Sonic. Anything's possible. Where's the Virtua Fighter team? Where's the Virtua Fighter Mania team? Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, so the next question is from... Wait, do you know this person, or do I know this person?
I do not remember. I think I got this over on...
Oh, this is from the Abnormal
Mapping Discord. Yeah, shout out to Abnormal Mapping again. And all their listeners giving us good questions. This is from Jed, yes, from Abnormal Mapping Discord. How did we get into fighting games, and how would we improve the genre? What's a thing that you wish there was a fighting game of?
This is a really good question. I'll let you go first.
This is a two-parter. So we already talked about how we got into fighters at the top of the episode.
Yeah.
I guess as far as like how to improve it, I just kind of want to see, and this has been happening to various degrees. I really like when, one, they make like games that throw out some of the inherent assumptions of fighting games, like you have to have motions to do a move or whatever. So like in Street Fighter, you have to do down, forward to forward, and then you push a button and it comes out with a different move. There's a lot of games experimenting with, look, here's a button, press the button, you shoot a fireball.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like I would agree with that. And I guess to expand on it is like, I think the thing that would improve fighting games the most is probably the thing that would improve video games the most, which is to just have people challenging the established grammar of these games, right?
Yeah.
Like, not even just you don't need to do a full motion to do specials, but like, what does the world look like in a game where we can make a fighting game that doesn't even necessarily think about these things as a given? Like, less asking the question, what if you did a fireball in a weird way, and more the question like, why do we even need to think about doing the fireball, I guess, is what I mean.
Yeah.
It's a nebulous idea, but it's something that people are working on.
Yeah, and once you like kind of get rid of those things, it creates like so many more interesting problems to solve.
Right, exactly.
And people are starting to do that and realizing like, oh, this creates a problem where you can like use a really powerful move frequently or whatever. And so, they make adjustments for stuff like that. And it comes up with like really interesting solutions. So I think some of that work has already kind of been being done. But
totally.
Yeah, like I kind of wish there was a little bit more of that weird experimentation that you got when everybody was trying to rip off Street Fighter 2, but nobody knew what made that game good.
Yeah, for sure. Whereas now that formula is like solved, so we're seeing sort of, I guess, iterations on it rather than attempts to bottle that lightning again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what would you improve?
I mean, I would say the same thing, but
okay, fair enough.
What else? I was guessed to sort of give an example of what you were saying. Like, you were saying that if you don't have to do a motion to do a special move, that like you can do that special move, instantly. You can do it very quickly and it becomes oppressive, right? So naturally, the thing that you do to balance that, or a solution that you can do to balance that, is to implement like a cooldown system like you see in the MOBAs of the world. You can't do this skill more frequently than a given amount of time. And then something that the Grand Blue Fantasy fighting game is doing, and will continue to do when it comes out, I guess, is that your cooldowns are tied together in interesting ways. So if you like do this invincible reversal attack out of a knockdown or something, if you there's this cooldown on it, so you can't do it more than a certain amount. But also what it means is that game has instead of having an EX meter like in Street Fighter where you spend resources to make your specials better, they just take longer to cool down, which I think is a really interesting idea, because it means that rather than realizing, right, I'm going to have to build this resource again, you've got this resource that you can't get around. You just have to wait for this thing to be available to you again. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, you go, well, am I going to be able to survive this amount of time without it if I use it now?
Right, exactly.
Stuff like that. So, there's ways to make it easier and introduce a new version of strategy and stuff to it. So that's really interesting.
Exactly. And that's like a minor variation on the grammar of fighting games.
Right,
so the bigger a variation, the more is open to you, the more design space is open to you. Absolutely.
What is a thing that you wish a fighting game existed of?
So I have actually I've given this answer to a similar question before, but either I feel like it was last year, maybe the year before, Daisuke Ishiwatari, the director for Guilty Gear at Arc System Works, was interviewed and said, because Arc System Works, they're a contract developer, so they made Dragon Ball Fighters and they're making the Grand Blue Fantasy game. Mm-hmm. So their thing, as has been for a long time, is that they get contracts from people who want high quality games made. They make those games and they take the contract money and they use it to make Guilty Gear or whatever they like, right?
Yeah.
So
Blaze Blue,
he was asked.
Fantasia. Yeah,
right, exactly. So he was asked. Now that Arc System Works is working with all of these super high profile IPs, Dragon Ball, that like IP is fairly jealously guarded. Same with the Grand Blue Fantasy is this brand new they do features with other stuff, but they've not had like a game made for them yet. That's going to be Arc System Works and Platinum Games, I think, are making one as well.
They're not on it anymore.
Oh yeah, they're not on it anymore. They got taken off. I forgot about that.
Yeah, regardless.
But yeah, so Ishiwatari was asked, now that all these people are asking you what games you want to make, what is the intellectual property you most want to make a game with? And he said Ruby. And holy shit, holy fucking shit, I want Arc System Works to make me the Guilty Gear of Ruby so goddamn bad.
They already started.
I think this is the thing. I think this was after Blaze Blue Cross Tag Battle came out. So
he wants to make an Xrd.
Yeah, I think he wants to make a Guilty Gear, but with Ruby characters, and the world needs that. I need that, like I need oxygen. Holy shit!
There was also that fake rumor that Arc System Works was gonna make a fucking Godzilla fighting game. Can you imagine?
Didn't that get announced? The Godzilla fighting game?
I'm gonna Google
that now.
I don't believe that's real.
I'm gonna Google that now.
I think it was fake. It's like one of those fake E3 rumors.
So yeah, there is a Dawn of the Monsters cell shaded brawler, but it looks like Arc System Works and not attached. So yeah, I can see how that rumor came out.
Oh, okay. The thing that I would want, I don't know, like a Mega Man fighting game.
Hell yeah, that would own. Like with the fucking Battle Network character designs. Wow, that would be great.
I would probably do like Classic and X, maybe. I mean, you could really take everything. All of them. There's been like various degrees of crossover stuff. There's like the Mega Man arcade game that got like a versus mode.
That game is so good. It has like real third strike parries in it.
Yeah, yes, you can third strike parry in it. It's so weird. There's been like Mega Man Zero showed up in one of the Capcom SNK crossover games.
Yep, he sure did.
I think he also showed up in like the Onimusha Smash Brothers ripoff.
Oh right, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Weird stuff like that, but I want just like a Marvel vs. Capcom, just Mavericks and Robot Masters.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Like all the different generations of Mega Man fighting each other.
Mega Man Generations.
Cool. Hell yeah! I was gonna say, do you not want like the universe to have another go at Sonic the Fighters? That seems like that seems like something you would want.
Yeah, they're never gonna do that. They'll never make another Sonic R. They'll never make another Sonic the Fighters because I'm the only person who wants it. I need to see a high-def version of somebody grabbing SBO's tongue and cartoonishly smacking it back into his face.
The world does need that. I agree with you. Let's move forward into a better world where there is a Ruby Arc System Works fighting game and Sonic the Fighters 2. And let's move into that. In that world, let's ask the next question from Rezi, which is from Twitter, which is, what are the important things to know when you're trying to learn how to play a fighting game or how to learn to play a new fighting game? So like, this is a huge question and there are literally hundreds of podcasts on this topic already.
And YouTube tutorials and rating tutorials. Yep. There's no central location to find this stuff, which is a big problem about like the kind of like grassroots nature of fighting game communities. But there's resources for like every specific one.
I think I would say that this question has two answers. So the things that you need to know when you're trying to learn how to play a fighting game. So the first answer is, I guess, the thesis of this podcast that we outlined at the beginning, which is that the answer is nothing. You don't need anything. You just need to play a fighting game. You just need to have some friends, have a kickabout, and enjoy yourselves playing and fighting together.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You need to enjoy the game first before you can enjoy anything else past it, right?
Right, exactly.
You're not going to get good at a sport that you don't enjoy playing.
Exactly. Because you wouldn't want to, right?
Right.
But then the second answer to this, so if you're one of the people listening at home and you think the first answer was bullshit and that I'm stringing you along, then you get the second answer, which is that the thing that you need to know when you're learning to play a fighting game to compete, to better yourself, and like you were saying before, as a hobby, the thing that you need to know when you're trying to learn how to play a fighting game is that it will take you 1,000 hours. It will take just a biblical amount of time.
Yeah.
But you don't need to worry about that. So
there's some bullshit people will tell you, like, oh, you can learn anything in like 25 hours. And like, they're full of it.
No, like, not only will it take you like on the order of hundreds of hours, but you need to want to do it for that long. So I guess that's the way in which the first and the second answer are the same. What you really need is to really want to do it.
Yeah, you need to be able to enjoy it enough that you're like, I enjoy this. I want to enjoy this in a different way. I want to enjoy this more. I want to understand this more. Right?
Exactly. So if you want to do it, you just need to want to do it, and if you want to really do it, you need to really want to do it, and that's basically it.
Yeah. The other boring answer is learn to play neutral.
Yeah.
Which is
learn
like,
to anti-air.
Oh, you gotta hit the people out of the air. You gotta learn what button to push. When you're at this range, you got to do this and this and this, and there's a million people who can tell you how to do that. You need to learn. You learn to enjoy the thing, and then if you enjoy it, you can keep playing it and get better. And
exactly,
you'll find the resources.
So yeah, next question is from Program 9, which is how would fighting games be different without combos?
Oh yeah, this is a big one, and this is also a big reason why people don't fucking play fighting games.
Yeah, I love me a good combo.
Yeah, but it's also like you just see fighting games as like 1 minute video. Those 1 minute videos on Twitter, you're like, okay, that shit looks impossible. Yeah. Why would I ever play this game if I'm gonna go online and get comboed for a minute and lose my entire health bar?
Yep.
No matter how practical those combos and stuff actually are, like that's the thing that people see, right?
Right, exactly.
You're like, oh, fighting games are about combos. I just need to learn combos. I'm not gonna learn combos.
So one of the sub clauses to this question that I remembered and went back to check on is so it's specifically canceling moves into one another, and this is an interesting thing I wanted to pick up on because in Street Fighter 2 there was no way to cancel, or was it maybe
Street Fighter 1?
It was either added between Street Fighter 1 and 2 or between 2 and Championship Edition, but like the point was that like the way that you play fighting games now, which is that you do a button like a punch, and then you cancel the recovery frames of that punch into a special move like a fireball or a shoryuken, where you uppercut into the air. That was not specifically intended by the developers of the game. It was something that they added as it was a feature of an input shortcut that they added to make special moves easier to do. And they found in playtesting that this meant that you could do a special input immediately after doing a normal attack. And rather than quote unquote fix it, they just let it rock. And that's one of the reasons that we emphasized fighting game grammar right there, is that like a huge part of every single fighting game you will ever play was added by complete accident to Street Fighter 2. So
yeah, and now it's formalized, now they like, you can tell if something's a true combo or whatever. That's like, that you couldn't possibly block it because you were stuck in the hit stun animation. Because it's been formalized, and it'll like make a little counter go up and say like, this is how many hits that it did or whatever. And so but yeah, how would fighting games be different without that? Since like that's such a big thing about what fighting games revolve around. You get the hit, you do a bunch of moves, you do a special, and then sometimes you do a super.
Yeah,
you make one hit into 20.
Yeah, it's like it's an interesting one, right? Because things right now, like moves are balanced such that the moves that do more damage, they're very slow. because like so like for example your heavy punch, right? That will only be done like you could like throw it out a bit when your opponent is like only a minor disadvantage as a kind of gamble, I guess. But there are some moves like big special moves that have such heavy startups that you would only ever do them canceling into them from a button that you've hit already. So like would those just I don't know, would those just not exist? That would be this is like a very interesting alternate universe. And I guess an example that you've written down here is early Samurai Showdown. That's an interesting example because that's a game where
there's combos, but they're barely relevant.
They're relevant in unusual ways for fighting games. The emphasis is very much on getting a single big, very slow hit that will do like half or more of your opponent's life.
Yeah, and the new game in the series, follows that through line, so you can kind of get an idea of like, because you can do like I don't know, like 6 hits max or something.
Well, you'll do things that do like
like 4 hits,
30 plus hits, but you will have only pressed one button.
Yeah, it will be like a super move.
Yeah, exactly.
Like actual combos, like you're like hitting the 4 buttons or something.
Yeah,
it really is just like you want to be in a range and you want to hit a really heavy hit, and then oh boy, that's a quarter of their health bar because you happen to be in the right place, and you bet that they would not be able to stop you.
Exactly. And so if you want to see the world without combos in fighting games, I would suggest you play the new Samurai Showdown, Samurai Showdown 5 Special. In particular, have a look for high level play of Samurai Showdown 5 Special because that game has situations where once everyone had learned how the game worked, like because that game is very old now, like 15 years old maybe. So people have played that game a lot. And there is footage of Japanese players playing it in arcades, and they're sat there not doing anything, not like sat like blocking, like just standing still, because whatever, like for every single thing that their character does, their opponent has a 100% life whiff punish for it. So if they do anything and their opponent like gets the right read on it or the right reaction to it, they'll die. So they just stand there for like 60 seconds. And one of them, like, there's this one particular video where I can't remember what it is, but one of them is like eating packet ramen while playing because they're not doing anything. And then right at the end, one of them will go for like a little attack. And if it whiffs, whatever, they just like, they draw and move on with their lives. So.
Yeah. So there are, in like that vein, there was what was the tournament for like Galaxy Fight or something they had, which was like really funny, like Galaxy Fight like exhibition match where they had like no health and people would just be running away because the stages were infinite. And like one hit would kill you. There's weird stuff like that in a Samurai Showdown, but there's also games that kind of like follow the philosophy of like Bushido Blade, where if you get hit, you die.
I was gonna say, Bushido Blade it has very, very minor, like again, almost no combos, and if you get hit, you got hit with a sword, so you die.
Or your legs give out beneath you, and you have to crawl around and defend yourself. Yeah. Along that style, excuse me. Two like random indie games that I can think of that kind of try to follow the Bushido Blade formula is Clash Battle Arena, which is the most generic name, not a great one. And One Strike, which is a slightly better one, more descriptive, doesn't look as good as Clash. They're basically like, One Strike is specifically you die in one hit, and all the characters are based around sense, like
given the name.
Different ranges and stuff like that. And there's like light and heavy hits and stuff like that. For like heavy ones reaching more, it's about finding the right position and using the right attack to get that one strike. And then Clash is kind of more the traditional fighting game. Mind games boiled down to like a much slower pace. You got like 3 hits. There's not any combos. It's just like you got a light attack, a heavy attack, and like a grab that you can do. I think there's a dodge, a parry. There's a grab you can do to like throw people off, where you can try to ring them out with if you get really close. And it's like just it is fighting games. You trying to find hits and balancing. Oh, should I use a light one here? Should I use the heavy one for this longer range and try to beat out, their attempt at a grab, or should I wait for them and react to them with a parry?
Yeah.
Like there's been some interesting work in the indie space. In
So I
those
guess,
kind of games. So, those things do exist.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess the evidence that we have suggests that like focus would tunnel in on the single hit. If you can't create additional hits from your single hit, then it stands to reason that you would just get more focused on the one hit itself.
Yeah, winning the sparring match, the movement and how you control space and stuff. And then the other direction, which is like where fighting games were kind of going before Street Fighter kind of like decided the whole genre.
Yeah.
Is you kind of can see it in stuff like Karate Champ or I think there's like a PC ripoff called like International Karate. Or the Super Nintendo game Taekwondo by Human Entertainment, where it's very much almost simulation-ish.
Right.
Oh, there's like an arcade fencing game by Taito that's kind of like this too.
Oh, okay.
Where it's very much like you hold different directions on the joystick, and when you push a button, depending on what different directions you've been holding, it does different moves. And the point is to kind of like get the point. It's very much like a simulation of competitive like karate and stuff where, if you land a throw or a knockdown in a specific way, you'll get points. Or you'll get, if you hit somebody, kick somebody in the head, you'll get points and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like those games exist. I'm
sure.
sure there's like what's the Japanese sword play? Kendo. Like I'm sure there's like kendo games and stuff. Like kendo games, fencing games, the karate and taekwondo games.
Wii Sports Resort Kendo. Hell yeah.
Yeah,
Fighting game.
those are fighting games, right?
Have it for Evo next year.
Like though you can kind of see like alternate histories for fighting games in that. I think Taekwondo specifically I want to shout out because it is very much in the vein of like international karate, and like a really cool thing about the game is you play most of the game with the point system.
Right.
And you go through the entire tournament, and when you get to the final fight, a dude just comes in. I think he like beats up the ref. And he's like, no motherfucker, we're fighting for real. And it just switches to a health bar.
Hell yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Video games are good, maybe.
Human Entertainment, they did some cool shit. Now
Cool.
They put out Fire Pro, I guess. That's what they do. Or at least, no, I don't think they're around anymore. But they used to do Fire Pro.
Fair enough.
This is from Twitter. This next question from Sahil. Do you think fighters will ever approach the sort of player base that competitive MOBAs and shooters have had? Do you think that they're held back by their pricing models or difficulty? Or does the one-on-one nature make them inherently less appealing for people to get into?
So, this is a lot of questions, and but they're all good questions. They're all very good questions. So we'll break them down. So the first question, do you think fighters will ever approach the sorts of player base that competitive MOBAs and shooters have had in the past few years? No, absolutely not.
Yeah, definitely not. Never.
But that's because those video games have wildly unsustainable player demographics. Like, you can see the businesses that make them, like, clawing and fighting over those huge player bases constantly, right?
Yeah, they have no idea how to keep people around.
Right, exactly. And they're like, this is, this thing that we're seeing right now where, like, some people make an auto chess thing, it catches on, and it catches on so hard that everyone has made one within like a month. Like, you would probably never see that with fighting games. Like,
yeah, nobody's gonna just go out and make like 6 Samurai Showdowns now, because you can't. It's impossible.
Yeah, it's like I don't know, actually. I guess the thing is that I'm not sure whether the chicken or the egg comes first, but like the impression I get is that fighting games are like they're they have to be so precisely made that I can't imagine one being made super quickly. Like they tried to make Street Fighter V quickly and it ended up releasing like, you know, barely finished and stuff. And because they spent all their time working on the actual game, then the bits around the game were kind of undercooked, right?
Yeah, and
so
people
I don't
are saying
know
Samurai Showdown is even like that.
Right, exactly.
Where they like, you know, it's more finished than Street Fighter V was when it came out.
Yeah,
but it still felt like everyone's like, everything that's not the fighting feels like they just put it out.
Yeah, and it's weird because like I like those games as well, like MOBAs and shooters. They sort of, but MOBAs in particular, right? They survive on the fact that they I guess like Street Fighter, they change massively often, right? Like League of Legends in particular changes all the time, and I don't know. I guess I can't see why. I wonder what fundamental things like. I mean, there's that niche appeal as well, right? Like, if all your friends are playing Street Fighter, and you go, like unlike with Dota, where you can sort of go into a game and have fun with a bunch of people, in Street Fighter, if you go into a game, like it's gonna be pretty frustrating to just like get in there.
It's
and
also
get
just like
beaten to death.
Skills like rarely transfer over between like games in the fighting game genre.
You reckon? I
mean, there's like basic skills
there.
that always translate, and like once you get like a certain amount of knowledge, you can kind of adapt to all of them. But like, if you only played Street Fighter your whole life and you pick up Dragon Ball Fighters, you'll have no idea what you were doing. Like, you're not going to learn that game in 5 minutes.
That's fair.
If I play a shooter and I play another shooter, I know how to shoot a gun in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I understand how do I shoot a different gun in like the next minute. And sort of same thing with MOBA. I think MOBAs are a little more complex because of like, you know, classes and like positions and all this other crap you have to worry about.
Right, but that's like if you played a bunch of League of Legends, that's all just information that someone can just give you. Like if you played a bunch of League of Legends, you have experience like microing a character around, using skills with high precision and things like that. If someone just tells you which skills to use when with high precision, which characters to pick, which builds to get, you'll just accept that information because you are used to it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I think you're probably right that with fighting games I don't think it's necessarily like the skills don't transfer, but there is there's information, I guess, loading time as you acclimatize to new characters, new system mechanics, you know, new entire ways of fighting. Like, I think Dragon Ball FighterZ is maybe a kind of slightly unfair example because that game is so different to Street Fighter, whereas something more like, I don't know, Under Night or Guilty Gear, maybe you would find your sort of skills translating a bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, it's just... It takes a long time to, like you said, load in and understand. And just shooters more in particular just have like an easy, immediate appeal. Yeah, and everybody knows how to play them.
Yeah.
It's like introducing a new sport to people, right?
Right, exactly.
I think sports comparisons are useful. Like you can't play... if nobody knows the rules of basketball, you can't play a pickup game of basketball.
Yeah.
Just like that. It kind of needs to have that level of cultural saturation before that happens.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like
that's very fair.
Like everybody knows how to play football, right?
Right. I think considering like considering like, you know, games like this as though they were, you know, sports like that but without the level of cultural penetration of say basketball or football, like that's fair. I get that.
Yeah, and there's also stuff like I think another thing that's weird about like video games, but specifically like fighting games and stuff, is like when you think of them as sports, there's no like street ball version of most of these.
Right.
There's no like version like you can play football and just like set up 2 cans and that's the goal, and you could try to kick the ball through it, right?
Yeah, and we still live in a place where regardless of what your electronic entertainment is, you're still having it in someone's walled garden, right? Like.
Right. Yeah.
However popular Overwatch becomes as a sport, you'll always have to play it at Blizzard's convenience. Things like that.
So you can't like really like essentialize it in the same way.
Yeah, right. Totally.
Whereas like I guess MOBAs and shooters are a little bit easier to do like casual stuff like that around.
It's an interesting comparison though, because the MOBA is almost hilariously complex, but people just dove right into it.
Yeah, they don't care. If somebody says you want to play a MOBA with us, like there's probably like 3 people that you can pick up to do that, which is weird.
Yeah, exactly. It's an interesting thing, and it's something that if they're smart, fighting games developers will be thinking about a lot. I'm sure it's something that the Rising Thunder studio will be thinking about a lot after they've been bought by Riot, that kind of thing.
We're waiting, man. I'm waiting for y'all to do something. There's been like 6 games taking your place since then.
The Rising Thunder episode is coming, I'm sure. But so next sub question: do you think they're held back by pricing models or difficulty? Yes. Particularly because, as we've tried to address on this podcast, is that like when you ask people about fighting games who play fighting games, usually they say the kind of thing that I said at the end, which is that they take ages and ages to learn to play. But the reality is the best way to get into fighting games is to like fighting games, and the best way to like fighting games is you like fighting games, and you can just buy and play them and have a good time. But video games are fucking expensive. Like, do you want to drop fucking $60 on a 1v1 experience that you can only play with your friends who are only around some of the time, unless they also buy 6
and then maybe you don't even have the character that you want because it's in the season pass.
Exactly. It's a risky proposition. Yeah. And that's awkward because fighting games are very expensive to make.
Yeah. Like intensely so. There's a reason why like only Killer Instinct even tried.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they tried to rush out a budget, but Capcom tried to rush out a budget fighting game with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, and that game got destroyed, which is a shame because it's a fantastic game to play, but it looks like garbage, and people won't play it because it looks like garbage.
Yeah, and like Killer Instinct and stuff can only do that because they have fucking Microsoft money.
Yeah, exactly.
They're funded by the platform that they're being put on, and like even Sony didn't put out enough money to make that like a thing Street Fighter could do. So yeah, absolutely, definitely. I think we kind of already talked about the difficulty part.
Yeah, and the last question: does the one-on-one nature of them make them inherently less appealing for people to get into? Yes, I've written about this before, at least in a tweet, maybe something else I can't remember. But fighting games, they do not prepare like video games as a hobby, as a medium, do not prepare you for the kinds of symmetrical combat that you have in fighting games, because every single player game that you have ever played, and to an increasing extent every multiplayer game that you have ever played, it creates like situations, like confrontations between you and the game or you and other players that are asymmetrical, and you are taught to seek out like to break that symmetry between you and whatever your opponent happens to be more and more and more often. Whereas in fighting games, perfect symmetry. You both have the same selection of characters to pick. The characters are, roughly speaking, balanced against one another. Like, the better player will win quite a lot of the time, and that is, like, unusual contemporarily, I guess. Yeah,
it really, like, shows you all your faults, too. When you don't have like teammates to lean on or anything like that.
Exactly. And that can be a super tough pill to swallow particularly if you're playing online a lot. Like, it can be really demoralizing. But
yeah, and you will just the fact is that you're just going to continue to lose if you're playing anybody better than you, which is going to be most people when you start a game, right?
Right, exactly. Like, you start a brand new game, other people are better than you. It'd be like that.
Yeah, and then you just kind of have to like realize like, oh, I'm just going to be losing for 30 hours before I get a win or something. Yeah. Not that bad, because if the matchmaking is good.
But like I guess the kind of thing that with fighting games you have to sort of actively internalize that you should be playing to learn how to play better rather than playing to get wins, because you need to do the first one for way longer before you can even think about doing the second one.
You need to lose, and you need to figure out why did I lose, and there's like so many options that you could be doing at any possible moment,
right? Exactly.
That it's hard to figure out what you're gonna do. Where like if you play a shooting game, it's like, okay, maybe next time I should go with my teammate.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe next time I don't run around the corner so fast, or I pull my gun out first. The interactions, I wouldn't say they're like way simpler or whatever, but it's
It's not that they're simpler. It's that in the chaos of a first-person shooter or even a battle royale game, like a lot of like player actions or game events are like lost. I guess like those games are chaotic, and what that means is that they're like necessarily loose, and that's not a criticism. That's just a feature of those games. But fighting games are so tight. Everything that happens matters directly to both you and your one opponent, right?
Yeah.
Whereas
you make a mistake, there you go. Well,
Yeah.
they're going to show you how much of a mistake you made.
if halfway across the fucking 50-mile map, someone throws a grenade and, it explodes and does 30 damage to someone in another room, that event does not fucking matter to you. There is no way, none of that happens in fighting games. Because even if you do something that doesn't matter to your opponent, that you spent the time doing it will matter, right?
Yeah. Right.
That kind of thing.
So, yeah. And then just like the one-on-one nature, yes, it does make it less inherently appealing because it reveals you, right?
Right, exactly.
It's
that revealing.
vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly. It's more vulnerable, and that vulnerability allows the kinds of communication that fighting games uniquely provide.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
on that bombshell, if you want to have your questions answered by us next time, and you want to ask about the game that we're talking about next time, then I guess, send your questions to us on either Twitter or Discord or whatever. But next time, our game will be Sailor Moon S, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
on the next episode, in the name of the moon, we'll whiff punish you.
And if you want to find out what that sentence means, tune in next time.
All right, Curly. Where can we find you before we sign off?
Yeah, you can find me online at twitter.com/curl_e_brace. I do bad tweets there. I also, at some point, will publish a YouTube video. I know, right? It'll happen. It's been about 6 months, maybe more since. No, it's way more actually. Point is, it's in the pipeline. And until then, you can read my tweets, and you can find a link to my YouTube channel on my Twitter. What about you, Arma? Where can people find you on the World Wide Web?
Oh, you can find me mostly on Twitter at siegarettes. That's SIEGARETTES. On Twitter, on Tumblr, on Mastodon, on
Mastodon.
YouTube. I think you got to put /C/cigarettes, and you'll find YouTube there. Which, interesting fact, over there you can also find a bunch of videos of me and Curly playing some fighting games.
You sure can. We did a bunch of that. And it was
We did
fun.
a whole bunch of what we call "Hey, what's this?" videos on some fighting games that you might find interesting if you want to find the next thing that you might want to play. Maybe there's some upcoming games in there. Who knows?
I guess
Who
you'll
knows?
have to see.
Yeah. But yeah, those are the main ones. There's probably some more I forgot that I have because I put like an account on like every social service that exists.
Gotta build those brands, baby.
But yeah, until next time.
You better go fight some more.